Welcome to part 3, the final part for our 85mm focal length for the SLR Lounge Canon Lens War series. Now, since we had a total of 7 lenses in this grouping, in the first part we compared just the two 85mm primes. Then in part 2, we showed you the 5 different zoom lenses that covered the 85mm focal length, and we chose our 2 favorites. Now in this video we're going to be comparing our favorites from the zooms to the primes to come up with an overall conclusion for the 85mm focal length. For those that are new to the SLR Lounge Canon Lens War series, be sure to check out the teaser video where we introduce the entire series. We talk about our testing methodology and what we're looking for, and also check out all the other videos and articles on each focal length. Now this is the 85mm focal length conclusion, and we have a total of 7 lenses that fit into this grouping originally. In the last 2 videos we reviewed the 2 85mm prime lenses as well as our 85mm telephotos, and we came up with these 4 being our favorites. So here we have the 85mm 1.8, we have the 85mm 1.2. This was our leader when it came to the primes in the 85mm class, but this is a great value as well. We also have 2 telephotos. We have our favorite being the 7200 f2.8L IS Mark II, which was our basically overall favorite, but in a close second, without image stabilization, we have virtually the same image quality out of this one, the 7200 f2.8L without IS. So let's go ahead and start from the top with their aesthetic quality and sharpness at their respective WOAs or wide open apertures. And once again, this is a visual test of differences, not a technical test. So we're trying to distinguish differences in appearance while viewing the images full screen on a 27-inch 3K resolution display. Flipping through these images at full screen, it was extremely easy to distinguish which image was coming from which lens. For example, the 85L with its WA of 1.2 had more bokeh, had a beautiful creamy look to the bokeh, and it was simply unmatched by the other 3 lenses. The standard 85 at 1.8 was also really nice as well. It had a really strong bokeh out background when compared to say the two 7200s, and the two 7200s were really virtually identical. In fact, you can see here and from our last video that since the 2 images from the 7200, the f2.8L IS Mark II and the standard 7200 f2.8L without image stabilization, since they are so similar in all respects, we're just going to compare the primes to the 7200 f2.8L IS Mark II. Really, the only factor between the two 7200s is whether you can afford the additional cost or not of the image stabilization. But when it comes to image quality, they are very similar. Now, the other thing that I can notice visually when comparing these images is that the contrast and color of the 85-1.8 doesn't quite have the same pop and look as the 85L and the two 7200s, because these are L series glass. You do get a bit better color and contrast rendition out of them. Visually, I can also differentiate just a bit that the 85 1.2L at its WA of 1.2 is slightly softer than the other images, but again, it's still quite sharp when wide open and completely usable. In terms of low light performance, when at their WOAs, the 85L is going to give you roughly 2.5 more stops of light than the 7200s at f2.8, and that is a huge amount. It also gives you around double the light or a full stop more than the 85 1.8. So it offers significantly the best light performance in this grouping, in addition to the best aesthetic quality and the most bokeh when shot at its WOA. Okay, so we see the aesthetic differences at their WOAs. Let's go ahead and come up to their WCA, or their widest common aperture of f2.8, and let's compare the lenses for sharpness and aesthetics once again. Now at this setting, you can clearly see that the color rendition and the contrast of the 7200s and the 85L are quite a bit better than the 85 1.8. But that's to be expected. Again, we have L series glass compared to standard regular glass. We also have much more expensive glass over here on this side compared to this one. But the 7200s and the 85 1.2L also appear to be slightly more crisp and more sharp as well. If we zoom in to see them up close, then we can easily see by our model's dress that the 7200s and the 85L are quite a bit more sharp than the standard 85mm. But in comparing the two 7200s and the 85 1.2L side by side, the difference in sharpness is relatively tough to see. But if I had to say, it would appear that the 85 1.2L is slightly sharper than the 7200s, which can be seen over our model's dress where basically the sequins are. And especially extending out to the right side of the frame, we can also verify that the 85 1.2L is also noticeably sharper when it comes towards the edge of the frame. Now visually, the amount and the aesthetics of the bokeh are very similar at their WCA of f2.8. If we zoom in, we can see that the shape and the blend of the bokeh is just a bit softer and more creamy on the 85 1.2L than say the 7200s. But comparing the bokeh on the 7200s to the 85 1.8 with both lenses at their WCA of f2.8, it is more difficult to see the differences. The 7200s appear to have slightly more distinct and high contrast shapes in the bokeh, while the 1.8 just seems to be a bit softer, which we can see by say moving towards the left left side of the frame over the leaves. Neither is necessarily better than the other. It's going to be more of a subjective preference of what you like better. But again, I slightly prefer the slightly stronger and more pronounced look in the bokeh of the 7200s. Either way though, it's kind of tough to distinguish, especially when you're not side-by-side pixel peeping. So for the first time in the series, it's tough to give you a solid conclusion of the best lens in this grouping because each of these 4 lenses, every single one of them, does something unique enough at various price points to make them worth owning. So let's go ahead and start from the top. If you want the best low light performance, the most aesthetically pleasing bokeh, and in general just the most bokeh overall, as well as the best overall sharpness and image clarity, then the clear choice here is going to be the 85L. But if you want telephoto functionality, if you want good low light performance, beautiful bokeh, and the best overall sharpness and image quality for a telephoto lens, then the clear choice is going to be the 7200 f2.8 Mark II. In addition, both these lenses offer something that's completely unique to make them both worth owning and putting in your toolkit. The 85mm is going to give you amazing artistic imagery and unmatched low light performance, while the 7200 is going to give you an awesome focal range, great low light capability, and the ability to create beautiful images with a unique artistic look via the lens compression. But if you don't have the $2,200 it's going to take to step into the 85 1.2L, then the 85 1.8 is going to give you, say, 80-90% of the performance for only around 1/5 of the price. In addition, the 85 1.8 is still worth owning even if you already have, say, a 7200 or even a 2470. And the reason for that is because the 85 1.8 is still going to give you more bokeh, it's still going to be sharp enough to shoot wide open, and it still has roughly a stop and a half worth of additional low light capability. On the other side, if you don't have the $2,500 for the 7200 f2.8L IS Mark II, that's such a long name. Then get the 7200 f2.8L without image stabilization for around $1,000 less. Again, you're going to get virtually the same image performance as the 7200 Mark II, the same low light functionality with the exception of not having image stabilization. So in conclusion, I would say that all 4 of these lenses are clear winners within the 85mm focal length, and personally I would choose 2 of them based on your needs, whether it's based on budget or based on the best image quality. If you have the budget and you need the best image quality, then step into the 85L and the 7200 f2.8 Mark II. These 2 lenses are going to come close to around $5,000 in overall cost. So if you're just starting out or if you're a little bit tight on cash, then for around $2,000, you can get the 7200 f2.8 without image stabilization and the 85mm 1.8, which again, overall, it's going to give you 80, 85%, maybe 90%, who knows the numbers, but a good amount of the functionality, most of the functionality of these other 2 lenses at less than half the price. Either way though, all 4 of these lenses are incredible lenses within their respective price points. I hope you all enjoyed this conclusion of the 85mm focal length in the SLR Lounge Canon Lens Wars series. Be sure to check out the actual article on slrlounge.com by clicking on the link in the description below the video for more example images, more information on each lens, as well as links on where to purchase. My name is Pye and I'll see you all in the next video.